We are going to get started momentarily. We're just allowing parents to enter into the webinar. Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Gina Muhammad, and I am the president of the Homewood-Flossmoor Parent Association. And this evening, we are joined by our secretary, Mrs. Karen Walker from HFPA, our interim principal, Dr. Jim Mitchum, and our superintendent, Dr. Vaughn Mansfield, and superintendent-elect, Dr. Scott Wakely. And we also have Mrs. Jody Bryant. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening for a very special HFPA meeting. Before we get into this evening's topic, I'd like to first take an opportunity to thank the many volunteers that we had Monday evening for our college night event. We had 14 parents who are members of the Homewood-Flossmoor Parent Association to volunteer and help out. There were over 200 colleges and universities present at college night, so we had a very great turnout as we have returned to somewhat of a new normal. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to assist with the evening. And also thank you to the parents and students who came out to learn about the various offerings at many of our colleges and institutions across the country. I am at this time going to turn it over to Dr. Mansfield.
Good evening. Make sure I'm unmuted. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. Over the course of the last few weeks, I've been in touch with Dr. Muhammad and HFPA. In fact, Dr. Kimbrough gave a presentation at the board meeting last night in terms of some of the activities that HFPA has put on as the school year has started and some of the fundraising activities. So again, thank you HFPA for all your efforts in supporting our students and the things that we do here at school, as well as our parents. With that, we thought we have the meeting this evening to kind of field some questions. And on the bottom of the presentation, if you can go back one slide, Ms. Bryant. And one more. We really do want to address questions and concerns that you have. So please do put those in the chat if you now know how to do that. And if not, I don't know, raise your hand and maybe Ms. Bryan can get you a email or shoot you a message on how to do that. But I do want to welcome Dr. Wakely, who is our superintendent-elect, who will be replacing myself in the next number of months as the school year moves forward and starts next year. And Dr. Mitchum is not quite here yet, but I'm sure he will be on board before the end of the evening. He is our
Dr. Mansfield, I am here.
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Mitchum.
Okay, yes, I'm here. All
okay.
Right.
And we also have...
I don't know if you can see me. I can see you, but I'm not sure if you can see me. I only see you. I don't see any other participants.
Okay, thank you so very much.
But I am here.
Great. And also Ms. Bryant, who's in charge of our HR and PR departments, to also answer some of the questions that will come out of this evening's presentation. So with that, we'll go to the first slide, past back to school night, and start talking about parent-teacher conference. Parent-teacher conference this year will be virtual. We had moved to virtual parent-teacher conferences because of COVID last year. I think in terms of comfort level, but also convenience, we are also going to do that again this year. It's Thursday, November 4th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. is the first session. And then from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. is the second session. And if you email your teachers or your students' teachers, they will get you an email. Do understand that there's only a limited number of spaces available. So if you aren't able to connect with your student's teacher, and it's important that you do indeed speak with them, please make additional arrangements afterwards by sending an email or a phone call to let them know that. And we have talked to our teaching staff, and we did tell them that parent-teacher conference certainly shouldn't be the first time that you speak with parents. And we would say the same to our parents this evening. If you do need to get a hold of teachers or you have questions, don't wait until November 4th to contact them. And hopefully, if you've had situations where you need information, you've already been in contact with teachers and vice versa. So those links will be available, and they're going to come from our principal, Dr. Mitchum. So Dr. Mitchum, I don't know if you want to say a word or two about parent-teacher conference. I know with the building level administrators, you guys are putting together the logistics for that. So I don't know if you have a comment or two that you'd like to add.
Yes, I believe a correspondence has gone out to the parents indicating the instructions for parent-teacher conference, but just to reiterate, there will be further information going out to the parents, and for those who choose to participate in the parent-teacher conferences, there will be instructions on how to log in and set your appointment in Google. I think it's Google. I'm not sure what Google platform it's on, but that information is forthcoming, and I maybe you can confirm that you've received the initial correspondence, because that has been sent out.
Yeah, Dr. Mitchum, I can add to that, and Dr. Mansfield. We actually did send out those links tonight to all of the parents, so they should have received an email today with all the links to their students' teachers to be able to set up those appointments. So all that information has already been generated and sent out. If you do not get any of that information, please contact Computer Services Help Desk, and we'll make sure that you get that appropriate information.
Okay, thank you very much. Next slide. Well, return to person learning. We talk a lot about hopefully hanging on and moving through this COVID era the safest way possible. And in doing that, we began the year with a number of safety protocols in place. And I believe I'm going to let Ms. Bryant talk a little bit more about some of our safety protocols and even some of our recent events relative to how we've been making our way through this COVID activity. Ms. Bryant?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit more later about some procedures, but in terms of COVID and safety, our students and our staff have been really great about utilizing proper PPE and sanitation. We have essentially socially distanced in our classrooms, and in our lunchrooms, we've added some of the gyms. In terms of the transmission rate at our school, we have a COVID dashboard on our website that actively shows the number of students that test positive on a given date. And it also shows the number of students that had to be quarantined due to a close contact. And lastly, it also shows the number of staff members who have tested positive or who have had to quarantine. So beginning this school year, since the beginning of the school year, we've only had 4 or 5 teachers test positive with no quarantines. We have had a few more students in that regard in terms of testing positive, but with the activity that occurs outside of school in terms of extracurricular activities and then social activities, it is to be suspected. And thankfully, everyone has performed well in terms of physically recovering. And, we are working with those students in terms of making up that work and providing additional instruction that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Thank you. And our other item, social media, and I'll let Dr. Wakely and also Dr. Mitchum chime in as needed. We really are trying to hit home, and we'll send something out if we haven't already in terms of preparing what we call digital citizenship. We've really come to an age where social media has just overtaken quite a bit of the communication patterns that our students now hold on to, and even some of our adults, right, with Facebook and some of the other platforms that are out there. But really, I'm not sure students are really grasping the gravity of the impact of social media in terms of what they say, how they say it, and the impact and outcome on others. To date, we've had a few, not a lot, but enough of issues that have come out of TikTok and some of the social media postings that have, caused us to process some things very seriously. I think for some of the parents, the concern has also come out of some of the threats that their children have seen on social media or that have been presented to us. And I just want to assure you, and again, Dr. Wakely and Dr. Mitchum, you can chime in as necessary. We take all of those threats very seriously, and we do process them with and through our local authorities and even the FBI and other agencies if it indeed needs to come to a point where they're accessing these social media platforms to get more information. So with that, do know we do. Go ahead, Dr. Wakely.
So I just wanted to reiterate, the amount of influence that social media has on our students, I don't think can be emphasized enough. We have our kids, our students, and even my own children and the students at school are being challenged, and the pressures that is kind of inundating them to make poor decisions in order to seek likes and kind of the admiration of others throughout the country really has hit a level that I haven't seen in my 31 years in education, where we're the competition or a contest to make some really life-altering decisions for our students. And I think it is incumbent upon all of us, as Dr. Mansfield talked about with that digital citizenship, to really focus on that digital footprint. And even though they think it may have been deleted, the ramifications can be life-altering, and we can't stress that enough. And we've already seen that, and good kids making bad decisions, and that is going to change the trajectory of some hopes and dreams that they may have, and that's really kind of a sad situation that we find her in, not only in our community but throughout the country. I've talked to a few parents, and it used to, and the parents are concerned about, well, if I have a suspension, if there's a suspension on my child's permanent record, that's going to impact their ability to get in college. And I'm here to tell you that the transcript is what goes to universities. The concept of your permanent record, so to speak, doesn't exist to the extent I think that people think it does. Your transcript is going to go, but what is also going to go is universities are searching all of their applicants' social media platforms, and a lot of our students are academically extremely talented, but they also have to know what kind of message they're sending about themselves and their beliefs, that need to be, that universities are trying to decide if this is a young person that is in line with things that they hold as important as an institution. So I think those are important conversations. We're going to use our compass. We're going to use opportunities we have at HF to continue to talk about the importance of making quality decisions, and these social media decisions, while they may seem like fun at the time, or what's the harm that's going to come of some of these TikTok challenges, there's some pretty significant implications for them. And we just want to make sure that we know that we've done everything we can do to help kids make good decisions.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make any comments relative to social media? Hearing none, we will go on to our next bullet point, which are student services. And we've got a number of student services available this year, probably more so than we've ever had, in terms of finding ways to support students in the classroom and also outside of the classroom. We did start a new initiative this year called Viking Compass. And within the Viking Compass, we've got opportunities where our instructors and the students are broken up into small groups, have social emotional learning curricula and opportunities to process with our students various types of things that we're hoping will give them a little bit more balance and a little bit more footing in this current setting. We've also asked kids, truly, if you're having issues, your counselors are always available. And most of the counselors are starting to reach out into the classrooms in terms of doing some of their presentations. But do understand at any point in time, as a parent or as a student, you can call, stop in, or shoot your counselor an email, and they will respond. We have social workers on staff as well for some of the things that may come up that need even more processing inside school, or even for those situations that are occurring outside of school. So do know we are trying to put together as many supports as possible. Within the guidance department, they also have a number of groups with various topics that students may want to be involved in or be a part of. And that information is held in confidence, and those meetings are held in confidence, just to give students a space where they can process some of these things that may be of issue or challenging to them. And always, as parents, please contact your student's teacher to let them know anything that may be helpful in making sure that your student is comfortable on a day-to-day basis within any of our classroom settings. And as far as student supports academically, we still have student tutoring 7 days a week, and also what we may call academic coaching, if kids don't like the word tutoring. In addition to that, if parents want to find private tutoring, we do have access to a number of individuals who also, for a price, and I'm not sure if it's at that $40 mark approximately for hourly tutoring if you do it privately. But there are a number of resources that are available, from student to student help and teacher to student help. You just have to ask. And if you have any questions, please contact the guidance office, your son or daughter's or guardian, or your student's counselor within the guidance office, and they'll give you those times. Absolutely. Any other student supports that anyone wants to share or expound upon?
I think what I would add is, as our students are coming back from being remote for a year and a half, we essentially at HF have 2.5 classes of freshmen in terms of learning the climate of the school and the expectations, et cetera. And it's important to remember that the students, haven't been around each other for a while, and they have been active on social media, possibly saying some things they shouldn't say, creating conflicts, and now they're seeing each other. And conflicts can be difficult to handle, especially when they've been out of school as long as they have been. So I would just reiterate to reach out to your deans, your counselors, your social workers. And we also have peer mediation at HF and peace rooms where we can mediate students and help them bring those problems to a conclusion in a safe and private manner. So I would just encourage you to talk to your kids about conflicts amongst their peers, and there are productive and safe ways to manage that. And we're here to help in whatever manner we can.
Thank you, Mrs. Bryant. Can we go to the next slide? And before we start processing all of this, Ms. Bryant, could you again share with parents if they do have questions in terms of how to get into the chat and some of the things that we can cover once they put those questions in the chat?
Sure. So our next few slides are related to COVID and different things that we're doing to mitigate the transmission. So as we're going through those, on your screen, and it is at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A and 2 little speech bubbles. If you click that, you'll be able to put your question in the chat. We've had one question I did answer, and then at the end, when we get to the Q&A session, we will go through those questions and we will have time to answer them. So take some time if you have any questions about anything related to the school year for your student, whether it's in class, out of class, extracurriculars, put those questions in there and we'll answer them probably in about 5 minutes after we get through the rest of these slides. So the slide that you're looking at right now is our updated COVID flow chart. So about a week and a half ago, the IDPH made another change to how long a close contact would have to quarantine. So now the quarantines for close contact between 7 and 14 days for an unvaccinated student. But essentially, when I talk to them about, what should they do if, and we go through the flow chart, and it's pretty easy. What do you do if you test positive for COVID? Vaccinated or unvaccinated? What do you do if you're having symptoms for both cases? And then what do you do if you've had close contact with a COVID-19 case? And it kind of goes through and specifically gives you some instruction. And if you're ever having any questions about that, we do encourage you to, on the next slide here, to report on the COVID-19 reporting form. So if you have a student who's having symptoms of COVID, if you suspect COVID, or you have a close contact, please fill out the COVID-19 reporting form, and an email will go directly to all the people that are contact tracing. We're actually adding 2 more contact tracers next week. So you can expect to get a call from people other than myself and the assistant principals. And once you fill out that form, we will contact you, and we will go through the protocol in terms of whether or not an isolation or quarantine needs to happen. And we'll come up with that return to school plan and those dates. So that COVID dashboard reporting form is available on our dashboard, on the website, on the parent and the student portals as well. It's really kind of all over the website. So please feel free and fill that out, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. The last part I wanted to talk about is if your student has to isolate or quarantine. So if that's something that we've communicated to you about, or you filled out the form and we've had that conversation, you'll receive notification from us in our conversation with a return to school date. It's important to fill out that form and let us know that you do have a student that's a positive or a close contact, because as of the middle of September, once we notify your teachers of those official quarantine or isolation absences, the teachers will open up a portal into the classroom. So the student will be able to actually see and hear what's going on in the classroom. It's not quite the same as hybrid instruction that we had last year, where there were a few students in the classroom and everyone else was on the computer. Now everyone's in the room and there might be one student on the computer. But what we do is ask the teacher to point the camera and the microphone in the direction of instruction or the direction of learning. And students are allowed that portal into the classroom. And we've heard that has been really helpful, particularly where the mode of instruction is verbal and there's a lot of dialogue between the teachers and the students. So I would encourage you, please, to let us know as soon as you think your child needs to be isolated or quarantined, so we can get those portals opened up and get those lines of communication open between the students and the teachers. Dr. Mansfield mentioned this a little bit ago, but just wanted to review our tutoring at HF. It is also on our website under resources. We have in-person before and after school, Saturdays and Sundays. And in the evenings, there are online tutoring for many subjects, particularly math and science, Monday through Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. So we encourage our students to hop online into those Google Meets and receive assistance from HF teachers in any of those modes.
Yeah, Mrs. Bryant, one of the questions came up in terms of where on Saturdays. Are we still in the Teaching and Learning Center, or are we in the library?
I believe we're still in the Teaching and Learning Center.
So in order to get there, you have to go to the back of the building by the tennis courts, correct, in terms of entry?
Well, as you're answering questions, I will follow up on that from the website and report back in a few minutes.
Okay, great.
Dr. Wick, did you want to talk about shield testing?
Yes, so we are happy that we're moving forward with shield testing. It is, as you might imagine, something that has gained a lot of steam and traction throughout the state of Illinois. Again, if you're unfamiliar with shield testing, it is the testing program that was developed through the University of Illinois. It is a saliva-based test. It is done once a week for students. We have sent information for students to opt in if they choose to do that. We highly suggest any student who is not vaccinated to participate in the program. We have fairly good results at this point in terms of response. We have several hundred students that are going to be have agreed to take part in the testing program. We also have staff members who will also be taking part, and both vaccinated and unvaccinated taking part in this. So it's not something where somebody will be stigmatized regarding, well, they're going to know what my vaccination status is. Anyone can participate. At this point, we have done everything that we've needed to do with Shield, Illinois. Our projected start date was supposed to be October 26th. However, our third-party vendor has been changed through Shield, and they're working on that coordination. So as of right now, we're still looking towards October 26th, but we are getting some information that might suggest it might get pushed back a week. And that's information that we just learned today. But that is purely, we're at the mercy of our third-party vendor, who will be involved in collecting the samples after the students have produced their samples and taking them to the lab for testing. So we do continue to have that. There is a number. If you have questions, you want to sign up or discontinue at any time, that is certainly the prerogative of parents. We want to just make sure that this is another level of mitigation that makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. And even though our numbers are throughout the state are decreasing, and we're excited about that, we don't want to kind of lower our guard and make sure that we get through this season healthy.
Ms. Bryant, maybe you want to mention, we did provide an opportunity for vaccination for students just this past week, I believe. And will there be another?
Yes, about, what was it, a week or two ago, we had a vaccination event at HF High School, and students had an opportunity to get a COVID vaccine, a meningitis vaccine, and a number of others. As we look to the future, as Moderna and other vaccines become available, we are looking to have another vaccination event because our students in a couple more months will be eligible for a booster if they choose. So we understand the vaccination of your child is your decision and it's a personal decision, but we do want to provide that level of support and service if so choose. So keep looking for that. Probably in, I think, 2 more months, our students will be at a point in which they can receive that next round of vaccination.
Well, at this point, we're going to field some of the questions that we have posted, and we do have a few questions posted. So we'll try to get to these, and I'll try to categorize them as I can so that we can kind of stay in the same ballpark. Staying with tutoring, Ms. Bryant, there was a question about Wednesday mornings, whether or not there's tutoring on Wednesday mornings. Has there been a change given the fact that we have a late start on Wednesdays?
Well, I'm on the website now under tutoring resources, and I do see that it still states Monday through Friday, but with late start Wednesdays, that probably is a situation in which there's not tutoring on Wednesdays. So I will talk to the tutoring coordinator and get some clarification on that. And if that is the case, which it sounds like it is, we will get that adjusted.
And a follow-up from the other question, tutoring on the weekends, you do have to go to door 26, which is the teaching around the building, around the pool, and to the back. And it's by the south tennis courts. That's the area that door 26 is. And you can go into that location during those scheduled times.
So one of our first questions that we had was someone was looking for an update on the principal search.
Dr. Wakely?
Yeah, so we've contracted with BWP, our search firm. We're doing a national search. At this point, BWP will be gathering information from parents and having conversations with students about characteristics of the next principal that gets hired. It is our hope that a slate of candidates will be presented to us to go through and do some initial interviews in November. Ultimate goal is to be able to have someone named by the time we leave for winter break. That might be somewhat ambitious, but that's certainly the goal. And then aligning things up with a board meeting where they would actually be hired, which could take place in January if timing does not allow. But the plan is that we're early in the game. We're at a time that we certainly are a position that is highly sought after. And we're excited about the opportunity of bringing a new principal in, and also getting the feedback of our parents and our students, as well as faculty and staff, as part of this total process.
Before we answer the other questions, Ms. Bryant, I think they're kind of categorized themselves. This last group is probably more disciplinary than anything else. I do want to address one other question that I had seen relative to support in terms of advocacy and self-advocacy for students, and how parents can help their kids kind of gain those skills and get more confident in that. And you know your students better than anyone, but I would hope at some point in time they can speak with their teacher, and parents do call the teachers and share with them too that you're hoping for that type of development from your child, so that they can work with your student even in class when it comes to answering questions, or maybe, you know, giving your student a softball lob question just to help them start to become more confident. And if you truly want to do more with that, contact your student's guidance counselor, and we can start to work through the counselor also to encourage your student. If they're a shy student or one that doesn't like to speak out in class, if that's what you mean by self-advocacy, or if they get a grade and they aren't really satisfied or feel that they should have received additional points, those types of things, those are all self-advocacy things that, you know, kids develop over time. And we do have some that come with those skills ready and set to go. But for those that don't quite have those yet, and you'd like your son or daughter or your student to acquire those or develop those to a higher degree, please start with your student's teacher. But ultimately, you can contact the counselor and they can provide some strategies for your student as well.
And I would like to add on to what Dr. Mansfield said. You know, in terms of supporting our students and going through this process and coming back after you know, a global pandemic, and it's been difficult for us as adults. And imagine going through this, you know, as a teenager, and the teenagers' years are challenging in and of themselves. And so one of the things, as our Compass program continues to evolve, we're going to be looking at how we can support kids' overall behavioral health. And I had an opportunity to speak with 15 or so student leaders the other day, and they were phenomenally thoughtful about things that were important to them. And they did talk about mental health and how the Compass program, and even though they know it's just kind of in the infancy stages, but really could evolve into supporting students' mental health and overall behavioral well-being. So that is something that is certainly on our radar, so we can provide a more holistic approach to meeting all of our students' needs, just not academically, in addition to academics.
So the next is a quick question about vaccination. What is the percentage of vaccination? So based on our parent poll that we had, we believe our students are vaccinated at a rate of at least 74%. Our staff vaccination rate is about 92 to 93%. So most of our staff members are vaccinated. And as I stated previously, we had 4 to 5 COVID positive this year. So overall, it's been very low with the staff, and we are pleased that we have such a high vaccination rate for our students as well. The next question is, what was the issue that caused the soft lockdown at the beginning of the school year?
I can take that, or Dr. Mansfield, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll fill in.
Okay, so we were contacted by the Flossmoor Police related to a non-school related incident. Actually, it was a crime that had taken place in Will County, in maybe the Romeoville area, and the person had fled to our area, and while they knew where the person, the suspect was within our school boundary, they didn't immediately have them in custody, and just as a precaution, they called all the school districts and put them in what we call a soft lockdown, and which means on the inside of the school, everything remains the same. People come and go from class to class, but students do not leave the building, and we do not take visitors in the building. So, but within the building, in as far as teaching and instruction, everything is as normal. That's why they call it a soft lockdown. But and it was only in place for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. They very quickly apprehended the person they were looking for, and then contacted us. So, you know, many times when you hear about a lockdown or a soft lockdown or things like that, it's because there's a potential for something in our community, or potentially because we live, because we're near a major interstate, that they want us to know about, just in case somebody comes into our area to hide or do something like that. So that was that situation. Dr. Mansfield, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, and I think in terms of notification for parents, we can do that. Some of these situations, as Dr. Wakely said, will just come and go so quickly, and they're not of immediate danger. They're just precautionary. So we've not sent out those types of notifications when they're precautionary, especially when they know where they're going to, which suspect, and capturing or putting that person in custody. But they do allow us to have that information.
So the next question is, will you consider offering a weekly remote work at home day for all students? It may help with behavior, and it could be a way to social distance for the day.
Well, in terms of that as a thought, it's a good thought, but we really have committed to being in person. The Illinois State Board of Education has strongly encouraged all school districts to remain in person unless there is something of a nature, such as an outbreak or, numerous quarantines, et cetera, that would warrant us not to be in person. So at this point, we have that as a consideration if we were processed or pressed with more COVID issues directly.
And next, a question regarding, will there be more communication from the school when incidents occur? I would much rather hear what's going on through official channels rather than from parents on a community Facebook page.
And I think we would agree too. I think the piece that makes it difficult for us is trying to sort through the credible issues versus those that are not. Otherwise, believe me, on social media, we would be posting things continuously. So we really do try to sort out those things that through our processes, through contacting the authorities or them contacting us, to sort through what those things are. So certainly in this last situation, things did make it to social media, and we were in the sense or in the process of processing those pieces of information. But ultimately, at that juncture, we did not send anything out immediately as far as that notification. And normally, again, from a credibility standpoint, when it gets to that point, we would. You would notice that, and maybe you didn't know, Naperville School District actually shut the entire school district down based on a gun threat. And that's an extreme example. But there's certainly those things that all of us know when and how to respond when they get to that level. So other than that, we've tried to take these on a case-by-case basis and try to make the best decision given the circumstances. Dr. Wakely or Dr. Mitchum, anything else that either of you would want to add, or we would move on to the next question?
I would just concur with you, Dr. Mansfield, that social media is a double-edged sword, and although it may seem that at times we're delayed in our response, it's just as you said, rumors get out there very quickly, and it's very difficult for the school district to get out ahead of those, while at the same time ensuring that the information that we do send out is accurate. So I think we try to do as a good a job as possible as communicating with the community and the parents. However, there could be the perception that we may be slow in our response, but that's only because kids and parents can get on there immediately and post things that may or may not be true, and we want to be diligent in ensuring that the information we do provide, when we provide it, is correct.
And we hope to continue to engage our parents and build a level of trust, knowing that if there is something that creates a present danger, present or even future danger, to a significant extent that is verified, that we're going to communicate with parents. And we are all in the building, and we don't want to put our students in harm's way. We certainly don't want to put our faculty in harm's way. So I think we need to continue to build a level of trust, that I remember my own father in the day is, if it was really important, the school would have told me, and kind of build some of that relationship and that trust that we're going to communicate issues that are important to keep your children safe, and there are some things that that we even hear about through social media that are completely false, that never happened or happened in another school district. And then you get the telephone game, and many school districts, as you've seen on the news, throughout Illinois, the northern Illinois area, and throughout the country are dealing with many of the same things. We have conversations with superintendents and principals throughout Illinois, and for whatever reason, and whether that's COVID or whether our students have not been in a structured environment for the past 18 months, students are making some choices that are uncharacteristic, that we haven't seen in some time. So we're hoping that a diligent effort to maintain a routine for students and have ongoing communications will continue to provide opportunities for our students to make good choices.
And Dr. Wakely, one of the questions kind of coincides with what you just stated. Someone is wondering what we're doing about the increased frequency of altercations between students that has been happening more frequently this fall.
Yeah, and obviously since I'm pretty new, I can't speak to, how normalized this is. But from all indications, I'm in the hallways every day, and may not be in every single period, but very often. And I can tell you from my experience, it may seem, because a lot of the social media presents like there's violence every day. I don't think that's the case. Well, I won't say I don't think that is not the case. We have had some incidents that we're certainly not happy about, and kids have fought. But when you look at the number of students in our building, you look at the number of opportunities that our kids have been in school, it isn't any number is too many. I'll say that. But I don't think there's a constant. I don't get a sense, and even talking to the students yesterday, there isn't a fearfulness, at least that they articulated to me yesterday, of their own physical safety. They just know that some kids are making some poor decisions. But that really comes back to some of that social emotional, behavioral health, self-monitoring skills that allows our students. And as we talked about social media, probably 99% of these issues that have, kids fighting, have either started or been perpetuated through social media. And so that's where maybe when we were kids, you can kind of have a cooling off period because you're not going to see them. But our kids are inundated with the same issues and their friends. And we've even seen some of our parents getting involved in antagonizing some of these situations, and cooler heads need to prevail, and we need to help our kids, make quality decisions, rather than, I'm going to get into a school fight.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's extremely important to take note of, these aren't necessarily random issues where kids are just going up and picking fights and pounding the heck out of other kids. These are all kids who know one another. And these are all kids who have either been on social media with one another or continue to go back and forth. When the school day is over, it's over for us. But we've come to realize a number of these students are on social media from the moment they leave school to 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. And maybe sometimes when you as parents think they're sleeping, they've got their phones going and they know where so-and-so is at school tomorrow. So that's really what we're battling with now. And I may be dating myself, but it's not like the note Mrs. Johnson finds at the head of the class that, some kid is wrote and trying to forward to another kid. It is instant and it is continuous. I don't think our kids take a deep breath at all. So I think, again, that's the important thing to note. It's not just random students going after other kids who are quote unquote necessarily innocent. And we have had situations where kids have gotten into it and maybe mistaken identity, but the vast majority, 99.9% of these have been students who are at odds with one another. So it goes back to something that we've kind of come to realize. A number of our students who happen to be freshmen, and I did notice the note about the fight on Friday, those students as freshmen have not been together or in a building since they were in the 7th grade. So when you talk about kids who are now in the 9th grade and only been in school for 3 to 4 weeks, that whole socialization and acculturation and even respect for authority, a lot of these students have been at home while parents are at work and they've been making their own decisions and they really don't know who we are or necessarily give adults the respect by virtue of being an adult. We too have a lot of learning and relearning to help our kids with in terms of what it means to be around one another, what it means to respond to adults and adults responding to students. So there is a lot of learning that's going to have to take place. And again, we're a month or just over a quarter into the school year. So we're hoping that, as the students are back and we stay back in person, that we can accelerate that learning and that culture of respect and finding different ways to resolve your issues with one another as compared to just, defaulting to fighting.
There's another question regarding incidents between kids, and I'll kind of combine them. The first is, how do you handle discipline after students have been in a physical altercation together? And then lastly, if this is something that, continues or is habitual, what happens then? What are those remedies?
Again, I'll let Dr. Mitchum and maybe Dr. Wakely say a few things. First and foremost, we have very little tolerance for violent or fighting at HF to a point where if students get into 2 physical altercations and we tried to mitigate and provide opportunities to, the buzzword or the term now is restorative justice, we have programs in place, whether it's a behavioral intervention program or sending students for substance abuse programs to try to alleviate and give them more positive outs. Ms. Bryant mentioned peer mediation, where we provide opportunities for students to work with students to resolve their issues or adults to kind of come to a mediated solution, if you would. But do hear clearly, if students get into 2 physical fights, we've not tolerated that from students, and they may be subject to alternative placement or expulsion. And I did see a note in there in terms of how many expulsions we've had. And I can't get into student discipline because we're not allowed to do that. But I will say a number of students have come before the board because they've made poor decisions. And at that point, they lose their opportunity to be at HF because they've reached that culmination. And before that ever happens to more students, we're trying to provide interventions. In fact, we're planning on going into classrooms over the next couple weeks to actually break into smaller groups and speak with students about where they are with things, and also help them accelerate that culturalization of, if you have an issue, and you will in high school, absolutely you will, but there are more positive alternatives rather than just coming to the physical resolution.
And I would also say, and while we have seen some things in terms of, we've had a few fights this year, as has many schools. The important thing to recognize with the number of students, we're probably talking less than 1% of our students have made poor choices. And even though it gets exasperated and the fights get recorded and played and replayed from multiple different angles, which maybe even makes it look like there's more than there are. We've had that happen as well. But we're really talking about a very small number of students who have made bad choices. So it's easy for us to get all consumed with the students who are making poor choices. But the majority, almost all of our students, are going to school and doing their thing and being successful and enjoying being with their friends. And that doesn't mean they're not going to get into an argument with their friends, but that doesn't mean they're going to get into a fist fight. So I do want to say that it is important to recognize, and to Dr. Mansfield's point, we do believe in restorative justice, and we believe in the restorative practices when we can do that. But when student behavior rises to a level that is no longer, that we're no longer able to have that student in our environment and create a safe place for all of our students, we have to make hard choices. And that doesn't necessarily mean full expulsion all the time, where a student is just out on the street, because some of them are 14, 15-year-old students, and they're going to make bad choices, and putting those students on the street, so to speak, may not be the answer, but they can't be in our school. So there are other options. There are alternative schools, and yes, are those alternative schools as good as being at HF? Of course not. But they are a way for students to continue receiving credit and continuing an education in a way that our responsibility is to create a safe environment for our students. And if some students make choices to the extent that we're no longer able to do that, then that's when the hard choices have to come in, and they no longer, retain that right to enjoy the great things that we have for our student body at HF.
Yeah.
And I think there was a couple questions to that.
Sure. And one other thing I might add, Dr. Wakely, just to bring this portion to a close, and it goes beyond our control too. If students make certain posts on social media, and it becomes a federal offense, and that is way, way out of our hands. And now we have students processing some pretty hefty legal issues that are much beyond HF. At that point, we don't have to worry about it because the authorities have come to get them. So do share with your students, and do look it up if you choose to, what those offenses are as you make threatening comments and those types of things on social media. They can find you. They have IP address people that's their jobs, is to find out exactly where this came from. We do not have those capabilities to that extent. But once you get into those types of threats, it becomes a legal issue, and they can process and work backwards through the technology to find out who those students are. And I will tell you, they have done that. But beyond that, again, it's not the number beyond what you would hope with 3,000 kids when you're talking about 5 or 6 fights amongst different students. We, again, don't tolerate fighting at any extent But given the number of students and given the circumstances, it's just like the perfect storm. Some of these kids have not been in a school setting for almost 2 years, as far as what that means to be around other kids, what that means on how you process and handle disagreements. So we do have some work to do. And I hope that's the very reason why we want to stay in person, that we have time to continue to do that throughout the school year.
And I did see a comment that I want to clarify when, one of the individuals talking about it only takes one person to bring a gun. I'm not speaking about kids bringing a gun and shooting up the school. You're right. It only takes one person. I'm talking about, the students who have gotten in fights, students who have misbehaved to a greater extent. At no point, whether one student, as we've seen, can create a great deal of havoc. But it is incumbent upon all of us in our community that to ensure that students who are talking about using weapons and violence in our school. So by no means does my comments related to the percent of students who are getting in fights minimizing the possibility of school violence that we've seen throughout the country. And so I just wanted to address that. We are fully aware of that.
And I might add just the one other point. When it gets to that level of kids making that type of threat, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those threats go beyond us and become a legal issue with the FBI and other agencies that do contact us. And that's why I said I can't get into all the details on how we determine what's credible or not. But you need to know there are great lengths that are gone through to make sure that we're as safe as possible.
The next question is, have we considered creating a student task force or Q&A with students for their voices and concerns and suggestions to be voiced and heard? And we certainly have, in terms of, our students are our greatest resources, as are our parents and our teachers. And I believe it's next Friday, the Viking Compass program is going to talk to the students about, how are they adjusting? What are some positives to being back? What are some negatives to being back? And what can we do for students to help those along that maybe aren't transitioning as well as possible? So those things will be happening. And Dr. Wakely, if you wanted to touch about your meeting you had with the student government students.
Sure. We talked and really and it's going to be an ongoing process that I'm going to continue to meet with the leadership of the student body, hopefully on a monthly basis. And it's really an opportunity for their voice to be heard, for us to get a perspective of all of these things, not only things that go wrong in the school, but how can we make the HF school environment something, as I told the students, we're there for them, and they don't make schools for the adults to work in. We have an opportunity to work in schools because of the students. And so having their voice, having them being heard, we talked about some of the things at the beginning of the year, things that maybe we could have done differently in getting more student voice in some of the decisions that certainly impact them. But also how they can take a level of agency in advocating for themselves as students, as well as having a cultural of community responsibility for the actions of other students. Now, I'm not saying it's the students' job to enforce discipline, but they know when kids are whether it's at a football game or misbehaving and just doing mischievous type things. Peer pressure is really important, and they know that, hey, we need to make sure that we're being responsible in our behaviors, so we don't lose opportunities. And so those were conversations that we've had. We're going to have ongoing conversations, but our students are so thoughtful, and they know what's going on, and they can provide us insight and things of, we think this might help, or have you thought of this? And students really respond to, certain strategies. And they've put some thought to that. So I'm excited to continue this dialogue. have students provide voice because it is their school.
There was a question about visibility of staff members and security in regards to student incidents of physical altercations. And we are appropriately staffed. We have 16s, a number of administrators, security, both in-house and out-house. And teachers are in the hallways and in designated areas during passing periods and before and after school. And if there's one thing our kids consistently do is they always typically fight near an adult. And one of the reasons for that, it would be my strategy, right? If somebody wanted to get into a fight with me and I felt I had no other choice, I would fight in front of the dean's office and I would be real loud about, hey, I don't want to fight. So our kids are, typically it is stopped very quickly. Adults are there to intervene, and we do feel that we are appropriately staffed.
One thing I might add, Ms. Bryant, don't forget, we're on almost 100 acres in terms of the size of the school. And it's just like any other law enforcement, there are only 6 policemen on duty for the whole village of Flossmoor on a daily basis for almost 18,000 people. So people are expected to do the right thing. We probably have, to Mrs. Bryant's point, any place between, 250 staff members that are in the halls and at different locations at any point in time. If a student really, to Mrs. Bryant's point, wants to find a spot where there's not an adult, they're going to probably be able to do that, which is why we said it's such an important thing. And Dr. Wakely mentioned this. When students see something, they need to say something, or if they feel that, one of their friends are going to make a very poor decision, let us know. That's why those relationships are so very important. And it's not called tattling, it's called taking care of yourself and taking care of your friends. So again, in terms of how we're set up, we're not a lockdown facility. Your students have the ability to walk between classes freely. They have the ability to do a lot of things, but we have to count on them taking care of their business, or else you are correct, this doesn't work. And we change things dramatically. That changes who we are as a high school, and we don't want to do that.
The next question is, so what are some of the negative impacts of the pandemic on student academic performance that we're seeing this fall?
I would say, and I don't know, Dr. Mitchum, maybe you can, add to this. That's something, at this point, it's somewhat anecdotally, we do have first quarter grades, and we're going to continue to measure student learning and really build. But we do know that there's some circling back and some reviewing that needs to take place. But one of the things that has come out from a lot of our teachers, it's the study habits, and it's the executive functions and organizing of time and doing some of those things that just what some people we might call playing school, so to speak, and are things that have been lost, and just that urgency for their learning. Now, there certainly are some things when you don't lose them, or when you don't use them as often, you lose them. But our students have been in school. They have been exposed to curriculum. And so our teachers are continuing to weigh that. It's probably a little too soon to truly be able to quantify at this point. Because even when we look at our test results from last year, with the SAT and things, students are taking that online and those opportunities. And even though we have students, we have 2 students who are in the top 1% in the country and national merit semifinalists, and 4 commended merit finalists. So we have some students who have also achieved higher than everybody else in the country, with millions of test results. So we don't want to minimize that learning has occurred. But we do recognize that there are some things that we're still trying to quantify and provide supports. And that's why we keep reinforcing I've never been in a school that has as many resources for tutoring and for student advancement and support as HF. In my 31 years, I've never been in a place that has so many resources for its students to, if they need help, help is available. And so that's part of what we need to do, is continue to have our students access the opportunities that are provided to them.
The next question is actually a great idea. It is there a way to let parents know in the HF newsletter or FY the topics to be discussed during Viking Compass that week? So as parents, we can follow up with our students on that same topic. And that is a wonderful idea. And thank you for that. And we will make that happen.
Yeah, I would agree. That's something we had never thought about in terms of how to partner with our parents with some of the other curricular things or topics so that they could follow up at home. So I agree. Let's do that.
Let's see. What is the security availability at night for both buildings when students are at school? And is there security available to walk the grounds in the evening when it is dark?
Well, we have security at HF from 6:30 in the morning until 10 at night. So students walking between buildings at night, unless they're going back to their car, we've asked students to park as close to those buildings. If they know they're going to be in the north building in the evening and they've parked in the south building, we would suggest that they, at the end of the day, before they go to practice, move their car to the north building so that they're closer and by lights. If students take buses home, buses go to both the north and the south buildings, so they would not have to walk from north to south. And for those students that do walk home, yes, they would have to stay on the lit path. And at that point, we would ask students to buddy up or to pair up or to call parents if they're not feeling comfortable, walking home, so parents can come in and provide them a ride as well.
Okay, and then the last question talks again about students who continually or habitually make decisions that cause issues. What are the exact question is quantifiable, measurable metrics we use to address these students? I would imagine also, what supports we provide, and ultimately, I think you did touch on this a little bit already. What happens if those decisions don't change?
Well, there's actually a demerit and a point system. So as students get involved in situations, they actually receive demerit points for that. When they reach a certain number of demerit points, there's a required parent conference, and the parent does have to bring that student back and discuss those situations or issues that are occurring at that particular time. And as Mrs. Bryant said, there are different mitigating programs that we put in place, behavioral intervention programs, or seeing the social worker, or speaking with the deans. And sometimes it means serving a Saturday detention or a regular detention after school. And as that number continues to rise, then at that point, when they reach a certain number, then parents going to have to make a decision, and we're going to have to make a decision in terms of, is this an appropriate placement for your student, given all the interventions we've tried and they continue to make bad decisions. But again, that's a minimal of our students, and we're fortunate as such. But as you can very well see, when they do make bad decisions, they're very public and they're very much in your face, and it's disruptive to everyone. But there's a demerit system in place, and as students work through their entire school year here, because you can get in a fight your freshman year and you get in a fight your junior year, that still counts as 2 major incidents. So again, fighting is just one of those things that is not acceptable here. So those are on your record internally here at HF for the time that you're in attendance here.
Someone's asking for a specific number of students suspended or expelled based on the social media postings and or challenges.
I'll talk in larger numbers. There is no doubt that we've had more suspensions and students brought before the board than we've ever had at this juncture. And I can't give you a number just because of some of the privacy issues. But we're not different than many of the schools at this point. I think, again, it's like a perfect storm. A number of these students have not been in a regular setting for almost 2 years without direct adult supervision or those types of things. And again, maybe for us, it's a large number. For other school districts, if you're talking about 4 or 5 fights, maybe that's not a lot, but for us, it is. And again, they become so public now because there's social media. 10 years ago, or maybe, and I date myself, when I was in school, no one videotaped a fight. It was word of mouth, and the stories got more exacerbated or changed, and not quite what maybe they were. But now you do have kids that take their pictures out, which causes other disruptions as kids are running to one situation just so they can film it. But again, that's where we are, and that's today's reality. And we will try to continue to find ways to help students, and also use that information for ourselves to make better decisions and better policy or procedures that can help students in the long run. And also, again, make HF the type of place that kids feel safe. And go talk to your students. After we're done with today's webinar, ask them if they feel safe. And if they don't, then your charge is to contact Dr. Wakely, Dr. Mitchum, or myself, or Mrs. Bryant, to share with us what specific aspects that we could do differently. And we don't even need a name. That's why we're here, so you can put a name with a face. You can email us, you can call us, and just share with us what that might be. And we will certainly use that information and appreciate that information to make sure it's a better place for everyone.
And our number one goal at HF is to create the safest, most inviting, engaging environment possible for our students and staff. And we believe we do that on a daily basis. And I think, this moment in time, we've talked a lot about how kids haven't been in school, but I think overall as a society in general, when you look up Apple News, the number of adults behaving badly, whether it's, about mitigations or on an airline, et cetera. I think it's, something as a country and as a nation that we're experiencing overall. So to see a little uptick in the fall of the year that we come back is not surprising. We are here to provide supports for our students, to find out what's going on, to talk about to our kids about what can help, in the best way to help them make different decisions. In addition, when things happen, we work with students and parents to get them back into school. And sometimes, some kids, as we've discussed, make a decision that it's hard to come back from. And, we have to protect the environment of our school. And so it's kind of that tightrope that we walk. We want to be there for every student, but at the same time, we have to ensure that HF is a safe place. And when you fall over that line, sometimes, we have to provide a more supportive environment for you than we can provide at HF. So, if a student is outplaced or something else is put into place, it's to provide additional supports or ultimately separation from the district. So again, the way we're talking, it makes it seem like there is a lot there. There haven't been that many fights this year, but I would say it's been more than we've had in the first couple of months of school. Instead of 2 or 3, I think we've had maybe 8 fights this year, which is a lot for us. And I think that's a positive thing to say that is a lot. But all of us are working on it. We have a student services team that is diligently monitoring student attendance and grades and discipline infractions to infuse those supports to help those students make some better decisions before something happens that causes them to, put their education in jeopardy. Let's see. Does the administration have something in place for parents whose children are acting in a way that the children needs intervention? Are there ways that we can support the parents?
So I would say, and Dr. Mansfield has mentioned this a couple times earlier that may have been missed, but and that's really, we do have parents reaching out to us and talking to our counselors and our social workers. We have school psychologists on staff. We can also get parents in touch with some community resources in terms of, we know we have some parents who come to us and say, I'm kind of at my wit's end, I'm struggling as well in with discipline of my student, even in the home. And so we want to partner with parents. We do have some people, like I said, social workers, school psychologists, counselors, that if we can provide some suggestion and some assistance, we certainly want to, but we also can steer parents to agencies in our community that can provide some assistance in those areas. And I think that's the important, I guess, final point that I would like to make this evening is, I know it's a cliche that talks about it takes a community. HF, when kids come to school, that's not going to be the end all be all of positive decision making that our students have. And it takes a cooperative effort. And to Ms. Bryant's point, we have our students have lots of bad examples on television, through our own politics in our country, to just parents and other communities at school board meetings. And we're very blessed that we don't have to worry about those things, but our kids see all of that. So it's important to model, even when we're frustrated with maybe the administration or work, how are we venting? How are we modeling what we do when we get frustrated in front of our kids, because they are paying attention. And while we may say that a lot with younger elementary age students, our high school age kids are also paying attention to, when we're driving our vehicles and somebody cuts us off, how do we act? When different things in our lives, in the grocery store, and something happens, how do we react? Our kids are watching. And for the vast majority, and again, social media, things that they see on television, on the news. I wish there were more positive things, because there's many great people in this world. There's a lot of great people in our school. But unfortunately, those aren't getting highlighted. So it's important for us to try to model the behavior that we hope and expect by our students.
The last question is something that I think we have, Mr. Richardson. Regarding safety of my students, how would we notify students, during the school day if there was a safety concern in terms of a notification system?
Yeah, we utilize a communication system. In fact, many of the parents that came through for the textbook and technology pickup, we had a booth set up. And one of the things we have parents do is, one, verify their information is correct so that we can get communications out correctly. But we also ask for student cell phones to be able to communicate with them in a serious situation. We also have those communications set up with all of our staff members as well. So we have multiple ways that we can disseminate important information, depending on what, the severity or the situation is that we need to communicate out. So we do encourage parents to make sure that we have their student cell phone numbers for those types of scenarios. We do not communicate with them, otherwise by cell phone, but we also do send out communications through email too as well. So any important announcements not only go to parents through our school messenger system, but also to our students in many of those cases as well.
And I think it would be important to note, and this parent asked the same question, is when we are sending those important letters home to parents, to also copy the students. So we will make an effort to do that when it is appropriate, to also send those emails to the student emails when appropriate. Okay, so I think that is most of the questions, I believe, that we've answered, at least in theme. And, opportunity for Dr. Mansfield and Dr. Wakely, obviously, to provide some last words. But I would also, before I go, just encourage parents, if you have a question, if you see something, you hear something, and you're just not sure if it's true or not, to just reach out to us and have a conversation and let us know, because we may not have heard about it yet. And also, if you have questions about discipline or what processes we provide for students and supports, to reach out and have those conversations. Our doors are always open, and feel free to give us a call or email as well. Dr. Mansfield?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Dr. Muhammad and also Ms. Walker for putting this on for us, or giving us the format and the platform to have these kind of discussions. And again, I think for us, it's really putting a name with a face. You can contact any of us at any point in time to further the discussion or ask any new questions that may come up. And that's what we try to do here. And again, I think this is a phenomenal place. I told Dr. Wakely, it is not a fixer-upper. This is a place that has really worked well over the years, and we've got really good kids. And for those students that quite have not made the decisions that they needed to make as quickly as we would want them to, we're still hanging in there with them, and we'll work with them as best we can. And again, that's our job, to take students from point A to point B the best way that we possibly can. And we've done a pretty good job here, and we do appreciate you helping us in that regard. And we do appreciate that you have sent us some really good kids.
Dr. Wakely, any closing words before we go?
Yeah, I just want to thank the HFPA. The level of support that I've seen, the engagement of our parents, the interest of our parents, again, is phenomenal. And yes, we're not perfect, and there's some things, but we need to focus. While we'll take care of those troubling challenges that we have. But there's so much for us to be grateful for. We have great staff and great teachers and parents that I've talked to who truly have a passion for HF and the HF community. And the HFPA is just an example of that. A volunteer organization. Everybody's got lots of things on their plates, but this is important. And Homewood-Flossmoor High School is an important place. And we love our kids and want to give them the best opportunities that we can. So there are so much, as Dr. Mansfield always says, the good news is there's good news. And I always remember that, because there is good news, and there's so much for us to be grateful for. For me to have the opportunity to serve in this community is a blessing. And that's the way I look at it every day. Not every day is easy. But that's the way everybody's job is. And so we get to work with the most valuable possessions that anyone has, and that's their children. And we don't take that lightly. So again, I thank you for caring.
And Dr. Mitchum, would you like to share any parting words with our parents?
It's muted. Dr. Mitchum, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I think Dr. Wakely and Dr. Mansfield has summed that up quite nicely. The only thing I would add is, coming from another district and being exposed to other districts, that I would share that Homewood-Flossmoor is very blessed. They have a lot of resources. They've got great kids. I've said before that I'm amazed at to the degree that for the most part our kids are well behaved. I think this phenomenon of violence in the schools, as Ms. Bryant has indicated, is a national phenomenon, not just in the schools but outside the schools. I think right now the nation is in a place that people are hurt, and as it applies to Homewood-Flossmoor, however, I think we're very fluid. I think we respond very appropriately to the challenges that present themselves to us. And again, I can't say enough for this administration, for these teachers, and for our students as well. The number of incidents of violence are troublesome, but again, with 3,000 kids, those things will happen, and they take a lot of airspace. But I don't want that to negate from, the 2,995 that are doing the right thing. So again, thank you, the Homewood-Flossmoor Parent Association, for being here and putting on this presentation, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the administration for taking time out of their schedule to address the concerns and questions of our parents. I would also like to remind our parents that our next HFPA meeting will be held virtually on November 17th at 7 p.m. So be sure to look out for the Zoom link and details in the HFFYI. And also, if you need to contact us, you can email us at hfhspa@gmail.com. Thank you all very much for attending and have a good evening.
Thank you.